Hey there, my fellow lunatics, and welcome to Dakon's Madhouse. Today, we are doing a tier list of all of the max level melee weapons in the game. Now, before we get started, let's go over some of the grading rules. Number 1, all items are fully upgraded to level 18. Number 2, I am assuming that the player is at the end game and trying to figure out what is the best weapon overall. Number 3, different play styles can alter the rankings of various weapons for different people. I try to stay neutral and take all play styles into account. Hopefully, I don't let my biases show too much. And number 4, all items are reinforced, because in the end game, you have no excuse not to keep your gear reinforced at all times. Now, unless I suddenly change my mind throughout all of these upcoming videos, you are going to see screenshots of all of my max level items without reinforcement. Now, this is because I already took all of these screenshots in one of my previous tier videos, and frankly, it took me weeks of boring, cutting, pasting, cropping, and I'm not doing it again. I'm sorry, but I'm just not. So none of the images that I show are going to show the reinforcement, but I just want to let you know reinforcement does matter. And just to emphasize this really quick, here's an example of a max level sword without reinforcement and one with reinforcement. I mean, just take a look at that damage jump. All of the weapons are like this, so don't forget to reinforce your gear. Starting with the S tier. This is the top tier. These are going to be our super versatile items, best of the best, things that are used in multiple builds. A tier, those are going to be excellent items. Top tier for at least one build, and often versatile, but not necessarily the best of the best. B tier are strong items that you really aren't going to complain about, but they have limited use or are eventually outclassed by other items. C tier, these items are fine. You can't go wrong with them, but you will eventually replace them, or you are going to replace them pretty quickly. D tier, maybe these items have a little bit of a niche use, but otherwise they're really not that useful or worthwhile. And F tier, the item is trash. It's not any good. Don't bother using it. All right, with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with ranking all of the weapons. All right, so let's go ahead and get started on this list. First, we have got the Anchor Axe, and this one I am going to put into C tier. There is nothing wrong with this axe. It's perfectly fine. It's just there are better axes out there, and you'll probably replace it pretty quickly. However, if you find it, and it is the best axe at the time, use it. It's a perfectly good axe. I'm going to say the same thing about the Atlantean Worm Sword, putting it into C tier as well, mostly due to the fact that it is a really strong sword, but it's designed for bosses. It would be better if it wasn't so specific in what it's really designed to do. And because of its lack of versatility and the fact that you get it so late in the game, it's really not all that great. But if you've got it and it's the best weapon you have at the time, well, then use it. Next, we have got the Battle Axe, and this one is going right into S tier. This is, in my opinion, one of the best axes in the game. It doesn't have the most damage. That is actually the Lava Axe, which outdamages the Battle Axe by just a little bit. But the Battle Axe's bonuses, as well as the fact that you get it so early in the game, make it such a wonderful weapon. It is versatile in a wide range of builds, and if you love axes, this axe is the one for you. Then the Broken Handle comes next, and this one is going straight into F tier. It is just a terrible weapon. It does terrible damage. There's no point in leveling it up to 18. You're just going to turn it into a rune song, so don't bother with it. Again, the copper sword is also going into F tier because it's really just not worth it at max level. It doesn't have any real bonuses. Its damage is low. There's just no point to using it. This is an early game weapon, not an end game weapon. And even though the Crystal Spike Club the Crystal Shard Club feels like it should be an end game weapon, it's crap. I'm putting it into D tier because really the only thing it's got going for it is knockback. And I mean, if you really want a knockback weapon, then I guess, use this one. But otherwise, that's all it's really good for. It's not all that great a weapon. However, what is a great weapon is the Galaxite Dagger. This is my personal favorite melee weapon, and I'm putting it straight into S tier. The crit chance boost is amazing. The attack speed combined with the really high damage is awesome. It is just a really strong weapon and will kill bosses as well as mobs very, very fast. The Galaxite Sword, on the other hand, I'm putting into D tier. The only thing that's really to its advantage is its crit bonus. And really, that doesn't make it worth it. There are better swords out there. There are better weapons in general that you can get at the same time, namely the Galaxite Dagger. And it's just, I don't think it's really worth it unless you really want the bonus that it provides. Next up, we have got the Hunting Spear, and this one is going into A tier. It is an excellent spear. It's crit focused, it's solid with damage, it's versatile, it works well in the end game. You can't go wrong with it, especially since you get it so early in the game. You can just level it up and just keep it the entire time. And while in the early game, the Iron Halberd is better than the Hunting Spear, by the time you get to the end game, the Iron Halberd really starts to show its flaws, and I'm actually going to put it into F tier. Frankly, the Scarlet Sword is better than this weapon in pretty much every way, and that's not saying much. And now we have got the Iron Sword, which is my favorite early game weapon, but when it comes to late game, it drops down a little bit, and we're going to put it into B tier. I think it's a great weapon. It lasts you a long time, but you are going to swap this out for a better weapon eventually. All right, now we have got the Larva Spike Club. And this one's going right into F tier. At level 18, it's just not really worth it. It's only got knockback going for it, and frankly, the Crystal Shard Club is better at the knockback, so why bother? All right, next we have got the Lava Battle Axe, and this one is going right into A tier. It is a solid weapon and the highest raw damage dealing axe in the game. Now, I personally think that the Battle Axe is a little bit better just because of its overall versatility. The Lava Battle Axe is much more concerned with a burn build, and while non-burn builds can take advantage of it, it's really designed for the burn build, and that's why I'm putting it in A tier instead of S tier. And really, following it up also in A tier is the Octarine Axe. It has got an excellent crit chance. It's got really high damage. While this thing sucks at its starting level, it is awesome at its highest level and is definitely worth considering, especially since it's craftable, making it one of the easiest axes to get your hands on. Unfortunately, the Octarine Sword is nowhere near as good as the Octarine Axe. This thing's going right into F tier, as frankly, the Iron Sword does everything the Octarine Sword does, and it does it better. So why would you use the Octarine Sword when you can use the Iron Sword? The Poisonous Sickle, this one right into S tier. It is awesome. It is always awesome. This thing is great for multiple builds. The poison damage buff that it gives is useful for killing enemies. It's useful for killing bosses. Everything about the Poisonous Sickle is excellent and S tier material. The same thing is true of the Prehistoric Crystal Spear, going straight into S tier. This is the highest damaging spear in the game. It is frankly one of the best mob weapons in the game because it is really easy in those tight corridors to just take out large groups of mobs coming at you in a line. Now, if you're going with mobs in an open area, axes are the best weapon for dealing with those large groups. But the Crystal Spear is still excellent. As well, it does great on bosses. So, S tier item through and through. Next, we've got the Ritual Dagger, and this one I am putting into A tier. Now, if you don't want to choose between the Scarlet Dagger or the Galaxite Dagger, personally, I think you should choose the Ritual Dagger because it's kind of the best of both worlds, but it's not nearly as good as either one. And so that's really why I'm putting it into A tier, but it is still an excellent, excellent dagger. The Rune Song is next, and this one is going into B tier. While it is terrible at its initial level, the Rune Song actually gets much better once it levels up. Now, I still think that its main bonus ability is not all that great now that hit points don't get all that high, but it's still a really good item. And maybe after 1.0, it's going to get retooled. I don't know. I expect it will, but it may go up even higher on this list after 1.0. We'll see. Next up is the Rusty Dagger, and this one is going into B tier. What really makes this dagger good is that you get it early and that it lasts for a long time because it levels up really well. Now, kind of like the Iron Sword, you're going to replace it eventually once you get something better, but it is an item that, since it levels well, is pretty solid, and at its max level, it doesn't suck. So it's worth grabbing if you don't have better yet, but you will eventually replace it. The Scarlet Dagger is going into A tier as well. This one, while not quite as good as the Galaxite Dagger, I think is a little bit better than the Ritual, but I'm still putting it into A tier. It's got really high crit damage. Its damage is good as well. And frankly, it's a pretty good dagger overall, and definitely worth it if your focus is on crit damage instead of crit chance. The Scarlet Sword. Oh, God, this thing sucks. It goes right into F tier. This weapon's bonuses are terrible. Its damage is terrible. It's not worth leveling up at all. The Scarlet Sword is a weapon that you get at the beginning when you first get into the wilderness, and then you ditch it as soon as you find something better. Don't come back to it. Don't level it up. Don't bother using it at max level. Same is really true about the Slime Sword here. It's really just not all that good. Its only real advantage is a slowing of enemies. And yeah, it really slows enemies, over 90% slowing. But who cares? You're killing them so quickly at this point in the game, and you have so many hit points and defenses that you don't need to slow enemies. So I don't see the point of this thing maxed out. The Slippery Sword, just like its early level, it's going straight into F tier. It continues to be pointless. Slippery has no point. It sucks. Right into the F tier. Things aren't getting much better, unfortunately. We've got the Solarite Sword here, and I'm putting it into D tier. While, yeah, it's okay, and if you haven't found better, then use it, but you probably have found better, and it's not worth it. Even though leveling it up only goes from 17 to 18, it only gets one level to max it. It's not worth that one level to do it because it's just not that great a weapon at the point that you're probably going to get your hands on it. Now, if you get your hands on it early, then yeah, go for it. Max it out, use it until you get a really good one. But otherwise, skip it. The Tentacle Whip. This is, frankly, the last good weapon we've got on this list, and I'm putting it into B tier. It is the highest single-hit damage melee weapon in the game, but it really doesn't offer anything other than that. It is the flintlock musket of melee weapons. It happens to have a much better range than most melee weapons as well, which is great for it, but otherwise, that's it. If you're trying to just go for really big single-hit damage, Tentacle Whip. Otherwise, it's not all that good. You're going to find better. But I do put it in B tier because there are builds that you can make that focus around it. So it does have some viability. I'm going to make the rest of this go real quick. We've got the Tin Axe left. We've got the Tin Dagger. We've got the Tin Sword, and we've got the Wooden Sword. Every single one of these is going right into F tier. They've got no redeeming value at level 18. There's no point to any of them. Don't even bother. I'm just going to throw all of their stats up across the screen real quick so you can see how terrible they are, and just skip them. You've got so much better at level 18. There's no point to these weapons. And that wraps everything up for today's episode. If you enjoyed yourself, please be sure to hit that like button. Subscribe if you're interested in watching my videos regularly. And if you feel like adding some extra support to the channel, you can always join our Patreon or become a YouTube member. There are links in the description. Thanks again for watching. You're all wonderful, and until next time, stay crazy.